Shout out to Kenji, great decision. He's 14 years old. You know, the earlier you make a decision to follow the Lord, the better opportunity you have for a great life, fewer self-inflicted wounds, right? Shout out to his parents as well. They're obviously doing something right. A good spiritual influence on Kenji is Matt and Chikako. She's over in Japan, but she live streamed that baptism, so she got to see that as well. Shout out to his grandparents also. Michael and Lisa Birch are good spiritual influence on him. Shout out to Lake Aurora Christian Service Camp, because Kenji, although he's only been here from Japan for a few weeks, he got into, I think it was a middle school or high school week of camp and went to Lake Aurora. And really great spiritual impact on him there. He loved that camp. That's the camp that we all support with our offerings, Lake Aurora Christian Service Camp. Shout out to the youth group. Youth group here at Vero Christian Church already come alongside of Kenji and encouraging him. We had Chris and Reagan Sipe were out there at the baptism. A lot of our folks were out there at the baptism. So good things going on there. He filled out, we got this worksheet, by the way. We use this with a lot of young people, but it's great for adults as well. In preparation for his baptism, he looked up scriptures on this worksheet that had to do with faith, repentance, his public confession, with baptism, and then with discipleship and faithful living. So we laminate this, and we'll give this to Kenji along with a T-shirt and a one-year Bible. Hey, you know the 1936 Olympics, you know where they were held? Anybody want to guess? Germany. That's right, Germany, in Berlin. In Berlin. Adolf Hitler was in the house at the Olympics. Now, one of the athletes that the United States sent was Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals at the 1936 Olympics. Now, one of the things that was significant about that, you know, Adolf Hitler had this narrative. He had the narrative about the master race. Remember that? The Aryan race, tall, blonde, blue-eyed. That's the superior race. Jesse Owens is African American. He goes over there, wins 4 gold medals, and kind of puts the lie to that whole narrative. Somewhat embarrassing to Adolf Hitler. I don't know if you realize this, but when Jesse Owens was over there, he made a friend with Luz Long. And Luz Long was one of Germany's great athletes competing against Jesse Owens. He came the closest to beating Jesse in the long jump. Luz Long took silver, and Jesse Owens took gold. Now, Luz was Aryan. He was tall, blonde, blue-eyed. But they struck up a great friendship. And after that long jump competition, as they were leaving the track field, heading for the lockers, they left arm in arm. And that took a lot of courage for Luz Long, because, of course, Hitler's watching the whole thing, and that was very displeasing to him. But they had this friendship. Now, a few years later, during World War II, of course, Luz Long, he's fighting on the side of Germany. And at one point, he writes a note to Jesse Owens. This is during the war. It turns out to be a prescient note. And this is how it read. My dear friend, Jesse, my heart is telling me that this is perhaps the last letter I will ever write. If that's the case, I beg one thing of you. When the war is over, please go to Germany. Find my son, Kai, and tell him about his father. Tell him about the times when war did not separate us. And tell him that things can be different between men in this world. Your brother, Luz. Shortly thereafter, sure enough, Luz Long was killed on the front lines during battle. 7 years after the end of the war, Jesse Owens went to Germany, found Kai, told him about his father. And he told Kai, he said, the most valuable trophy, award that I brought home from the Olympics was my friendship with your father. I want to talk this morning about loyalty. Loyalty on Team Jesus. Now, if you're new to us, I know we have some first-time guests here. We usually do. I met Peter and Sarah, and we have some first-time guests here. We've been in this sermon series entitled Team Jesus. And we're making our applications from 1 Corinthians chapter 12 to the church, or the local church in particular. That's our Team Jesus. We talked about our coach. Of course, is Jesus. We talked about chemistry on the team. We talked about team identity, which comes from our baptism. We're all baptized into Christ, into the Team Jesus. But today, my focus is loyalty. The central idea, the takeaway is this. We are to be loyal to one another on the team. That's the whole message. If you left today, you've got the message. But I want to tell a few stories to kind of reinforce this. but the loyalty on Team Jesus. What does that look like? It looks like at least three things. Number one, loyalty values all the members on the team. Loyalty values all the members. 1 Corinthians 12:21, the eye can never say to the hand, I don't need you. The head can never say to the feet, I don't need you. In fact, some parts of the body that seem weakest and least important are actually the most necessary. And as you recall, the context here is that in the church at Corinth, the first Christian church there at Corinth, they had gifts, they had spiritual gifts. Because they'd been founded by an apostle, Apostle Paul had laid hands on people, some of those folks had supernatural gifts. Maybe they could speak in tongues, they could prophesy, they could perform miracles, they could do healings. Others had less prominent gifts, the kind that are more behind the scenes. So they might have a gift of administration, might have a gift of mercy, might have a gift of teaching, might have a gift of generosity. And there was some jealousy going on within the congregation because of that. And here, apparently, we would infer from what Paul writes, and maybe some of those with the more prominent, upfront gifts are thinking they don't need those with the lesser gifts, those that are behind the scenes. Not really lesser, but the less prominent gifts. And so I don't need you. I don't need the guy with administration. I don't need the guy with mercy. And so Paul uses the analogy of the body. He says you can't really do that. Every part is interdependent, and so we value each other. The eye can't say to the hand, I don't need you, because you're not an eye, you're just a hand. I don't need you. I mean, if the eye didn't have a hand, who's going to rub sleep out of the eye? Eye. Who's going to put eye drops in the eye when the eye is red and irritated? So the eye needs the hand. The head needs the feet. How else is the head going to get around anywhere without legs and without feet, and without a body? And so there's this, he says, you need to value one another in the church. And likewise, that's what we do. Everybody values everyone else in the church. I've been in kingdom work long enough to have seen a few things. One thing I've noticed, sometimes, every once in a while, somebody will show up at the church, and they know the jargon, and they talk the talk, the whole love Jesus talk, and maybe they're like a super gifted person, and they burn bright for a few months, and then after 6 months or 10 months, whatever, they burn out, and they move on. And I simply note that this long-standing, good, solid, enduring kingdom work, by and large, is done by those who show up and they do the work day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, often behind the scenes, not necessarily achieving any great recognition from anyone, but from the Lord. The human appendix was once scorned. The human appendix was once scorned as a useless vestigial organ. You know what I mean by vestigial? No. Superfluous. Yeah. Unnecessary. Okay, a leftover. Through evolution, it used to have a certain purpose, and now it's kind of leftover. Vestigial, superfluous. Now it's recognized as a highly specialized organ that plays an important role in controlling bacteria that enters the intestines. If you've had yours out, I'm sorry. But it does play an important role. And at one time, evolutionary scientists estimated there were as many as 180 vestigial structures in the human body. But now, as biology has progressed and science has progressed, that list of 180 vestigial structures in the human body has shrunk to virtually zero. We now know there's nothing in the body that is superfluous, that's unnecessary, that's some leftover from a bygone day. Every single structure and organ is important and necessary. And likewise in the church, no vestigial structures, no vestigial members. Everyone is important and value and is making a contribution. So loyalty values all the members. Number two, saying three things today about loyalty. But the overarching point is loyalty. Be loyal. Number two, loyalty protects all members. Protects. Verse 23, Paul continues, the parts we regard, talking about the body, the parts we regard as less honorable are those we clothe with the greatest care. So we carefully protect those parts that should not be seen, while the more honorable parts do not require this special care. So God has put the body together such that extra honor and care are given to those parts that have less dignity. Thank the Lord for clothes, right? Aren't we all glad that we have clothes? We just want to look good in our clothes. But Team Jesus is to value and to protect and to honor even those that, as Paul refers to them in one place, the ungifted. In December 1996, Sports Illustrated carried the article, Someone to Lean On. Someone to Lean On, about James Kennedy of Anderson, South Carolina. James Kennedy was mentally disabled. At age 18, he was a dirty, disheveled boy who enjoyed roaring down a hill on a grocery cart, screaming like a banshee. No one ever played with him. He could barely speak or understand any rules. He couldn't read or write. He was scarred from various accidents, and the fear in his eyes reflected his experiences with bullies. One day in the autumn of 1964, James's cart took him to the Hannah High School football field. He watched the team practice and absorbed it all. A few days later, the players heard noises and looked over to see James commanding his own football team, one that only he could see, through a series of calisthenics and drills, doing his best to mimic the coach's body language, signals, and commands. The young coach, Harold Jones, turned and looked too, and then the coach called him over. As it's in the Sports Illustrated article, the writer said, what made Jones invite the wild boy with missing teeth to come onto his field and then to come to a game and to help carry the water coolers and then hop into Jones's pickup truck for a ride home? Why would a coach work so hard to discipline and then unleash a loose cannon like James Kennedy? Well, Coach Jones was a Christian. And Coach Jones said, well, it was God's plan. Soon, James Kennedy was going everywhere Coach Jones and his team went. And his halftime show was gaining renown. At halftime, James would charge onto the field, bend down like the center, screeching preposterous signals, and hike the ball to himself, and then dipsy-doodle all around. And finding no one to accept himself, James would flip the ball to James, and then to the crowd's roar, boogie-woogie, all the way to pay dirt. Coach took James to the doctor every year, monitored his diet, made sure his medical and dental bills were paid. Assistant coach Honeycutt often said James would be dead by now if not for Coach Jones. The players and the town adopted James Kennedy. James holds more high school varsity letters than any other man in history, having received one each from the football, basketball, and track teams every year for the past 3 decades. He was made an honorary junior student at that high school, never to graduate. James died in 2019, age 73. The community at Hannah High School realized that what they got from James was more than what they were doing for him. Hannah High School principal Sheila Hilton said at the memorial service, love and compassion can change lives. It changed his, and in return, he has changed ours. We're talking about loyalty on the team, which protects all the members. So think about Jesus. Jesus protected the least of these. You remember when the woman was taken in the act of adultery and she was brought before Jesus and the crowd wanted to stone her to death, and Jesus intervened. He protected her. He de-escalated the situation. He saved her from a horrific death. You remember when the disciples were criticizing the parents who wanted to bring their children to Jesus? And he said, don't do that. He said, let those children come. And he placed his hands on their heads and he blessed them. And then he warned his audience. He said, you be careful how you treat little children. He said, their angels in heaven always have the attention of my heavenly Father. Don't hurt one of these. Don't cause them to stumble. It'd be better for you if you had a millstone tied around your neck and you were thrown into the ocean than hurt one of these little children. He was a protector. When Jesus was arrested and the mob came in the middle of the night, he protected his disciples. He said, I know you've come for me. You let these men go. And they did. And they ran away. And Jesus was left alone. And we're the body of Christ. This is the church. This is Team Jesus. And so with those who are maybe extra grace people in our midst, some of us require a little extra grace, a little extra patience, a little extra long suffering. We have extra grace people, and we go out of our way to protect those people. We're talking about loyalty on the team. Values, protects. And then one more thing. Loyalty supports all the members on the team. Loyalty supports all the members. And he continues, verse 25. So this all makes for harmony among the members, so that all the members care for each other. If one part suffers, all the parts suffer with it. And if one part is honored, all the parts are glad. You're working on a project, you got the hammer out, you hit your thumb with the hammer, right? The whole body sympathizes with that one member of the body. Your other hand comes along and grips it, your lips want to give it a kiss there, your vocal cords go into action, hopefully not saying any bad words, just groaning in sympathy. And likewise, the whole body rejoices during the good times. Sit down, Thanksgiving, eat a good meal, your eyes roll back in your head, and your vocal cords say, mmm. And there's nourishment that goes to every part of the body because we're treating the stomach well. And likewise on Team Jesus. We love each other. We care about each other. We support each other. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Some folks are newer members. Others been in this church for decades, long enough to have shared good times and hard times together. Right? We've sat with each other in the emergency rooms. We've been graveside with one another. Just this past week, one of our prior members, Gay Chrisman, passed away. And many of the folks who knew her were out there at the graveside service with Reed. Somebody's teenage child takes a walk on the wild side, and the other members come alongside and join in prayer for that person and encouragement. We know what that feels like, and every part shares in those difficult times. Likewise, in the victories, we rejoice with those who rejoice. When someone like Kenji is baptized, it's as if that's our own 14-year-old or our own grandson or son. We all rejoice in that. That's a victory for the entire team. That's what loyalty does on a team. Darren Gertis, an expert on leadership, remarks on the cohesive loyalty and love and support on the Navy SEALs. And he speculates that part of the reason why is probably what they experience in their boot camp, which is BUDS training, which lasts for 25 weeks. The first lesson that they learn is the SEAL Creed, which is as follows. I will never quit. I persevere and thrive on adversity. My nation expects me to be physically harder and mentally stronger than my enemies. If knocked down, I'll get back up every time. I'll draw on every remaining ounce of strength to protect my teammates and accomplish our mission. I am never out of the fight. That's the SEAL Creed. Now, one thing I know, I would not last one day in BUDS training, that 25 weeks, even when I wore younger man's clothes. But I do think that creed certainly can apply to Team Jesus, especially that part, that we all have this attitude. I will draw on every remaining ounce of strength to protect my teammates and accomplish the mission. One of the more endearing traditions in college football has to be the one that's at the University of Iowa. Now, at the University of Iowa, the Kinnick Stadium is built right next to a children's hospital, Stead Family Children's Hospital. Of course, they've got these beautiful windows up there, so on game day, the kids can all go up to the top floor, and the families all go up with them, and it's looking over that stadium, and they've got a great view. But the tradition at the University of Iowa is at the conclusion of the fourth quarter, everybody turns and looks up at the hospital. All the fans and all the players and all the coaches, and they point and they wave and they cheer for the children. When I was working on this, I was thinking about Caroline Beadham. Caroline Beadham is a member of our church, and she passed away about 2 months ago. Caroline was not affluent. She struggled to make ends meet. She was not particularly gifted. She did not have prominent spiritual gifts. As far as her family was concerned, her daughter had passed away, and then the father had taken the daughter and moved away and just simply lost contact. They were uncommunicative with Caroline. So she had no biological family to speak of. And she had a hard life, and she struggled with her demons. And I'm not betraying any confidences in saying that, because if anybody who had a conversation with two minutes with Caroline Beadham knew that she struggled with her demons. She was open and transparent about that. But she was a member of this church for years and years, and she found a way to give and to contribute. I mean, if we had a drive, like we're talking about the candy drive, she's going to bring candy. If we have a drive for school supplies, she's going to bring school supplies. She was on that lunch team, and she would show up every month. She'd bring food, and then she was in the kitchen. She was washing dishes. Other people are fellowshipping, having a good time. She's in there cleaning. She found a way to give and to participate. And this church was really, for Caroline, this church was the only family she had. And this church was family to her. So she had a life group that she belonged to, so they were such a close support for her. The ladies over there in the lunch ministry came around her and gave her so much encouragement and support. Our elders provided pastoral care for her, supported her and encouraged her, and sometimes financially helped her as well. And in her final days, Pastor Randy and his wife Connie especially were with her to the very end. So for her memorial service, I was out of town. I couldn't be there or participate, so Pastor Randy did the memorial service. When I came back from out of town, I found on my desk there in my office a thank you note. And it was a thank you note from Caroline, which means, among other things, that as she lay dying, her thoughts were thoughts of gratitude and thanks. It was a thank you note to me and to the entire congregation for what had been done for her. She was thinking grateful thoughts, and she was expressing that in a thank you note. And she did something that in 45 years of ministry I had never experienced, a posthumous thank you note. To this day, I have no idea how that got on my desk. I haven't asked anybody. Maybe some other folks got this as well. But she's the only one who somehow reached out from beyond the grave and sent a thank you note. She was one of the least of these. And Team Jesus, the church, supported her, valued her, loved her, and cared about her as she did the church. Folks, that's what we're all looking for and all striving for. That's what we want to cultivate and build here. That's the team spirit that we want here in our church. And some who are looking for a church, we want you to come on board and be a part of that. You are valued and loved, and we need you here on Team Jesus at Vero Christian Church.